Raza here for OddsShopper, bringing you my best bet of the day. New week ahead. It is Monday, October 3rd in the sports world. We've got Monday Night Football. We've got a couple other things going on, so we're going to dig into the lines, find the bet, and place that wager. Hope everyone's Sunday went well. Hope you're enjoying all the content here at OddsShopper. If you've just found us or you're a loyal listener, welcome to OddsShopper, breaking down all things betting for every sport. You want to support us, hit the like button. It does really help us. You support the stream, and if you want to join the team, you want to join this fast-growing community, just press subscribe. We want you as part of the team. We want you watching these videos and commenting and being part of building up and hopefully cashing these tickets. Last time I saw you guys was Saturday. USC, they played all right, but 25.5-point favorites. They played too slow. They did win comfortably, but they never really threatened to cover that number. We look for the bounce back. It was a good college football week overall. That was a disappointing one, and now we turn that page to Monday Night Football. I'm going to talk about BetMGM as well in this video in just a little bit, but let's get into the wager. Where am I going for Monday Night Football? Here we go. Player props. This is a tough game. We've got the Rams. We've got the Niners. A close competitive spread. I didn't really have a lean on the side. I guess if I had to pick, I would lean with the Rams, but honestly, it was a very, very close spread, and I think that feels about right. But I did find a passing yards prop that I like under 252.5 passing yards for Matthew Stafford in this spot. First off, usually I end with this. I'll start with this. I went to oddshopper.com because with prop lines, you're going to find discrepancies. This is the best number by far. I found 249s, 250s, 252.5. I am laying a little juice at minus 125. That's a really good number, courtesy of OddsShopper. There was juice attached to those numbers as well, so I like this. Now let's get into the teams. We've got the Rams, 2-1 on the year. They opened, they got crushed by Buffalo. Stafford threw the ball 41 times. Makes sense, they were playing catch-up. Then they controlled the Falcons. The game got closer as it went on, but they were in full control the whole time. 36 attempts. Last time out, they beat the Cardinals pretty comfortably. 25 attempts for Stafford. Really a mixed bag. I don't draw a lot from it. Most of the reasons that I'm looking to short this number, it has nothing really to do with the Rams. We know what they're about. They're the Super Bowl champs. Stafford and the receivers, he's got Kupp, Allen Robinson into the mix. He's got some backs. They can throw the ball, and they can be pretty effective. But I think it's more the matchup and stylistically why I think that he has more of a pedestrian output today. Now, other side, the San Francisco 49ers, 1-2. This is a big game. Really could use it. We'll see what Jimmy G brings them and the offense brings them. But what we know, this is a pretty strong defense. You can't really run against them. It's not that much easier to pass. So far, 5th in the league in passing yards allowed per attempt, just 5.5 yards allowed. That's pretty damn good.
And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Monday, October 3rd. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by PrizePicks. Baseball is still not over. A couple more days left of the regular season. 11 games to talk about for today. So before we get started, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Greg, are you excited for the final week of the MLB regular season?
I actually am, because my futures bets did really well this year in terms of divisional bets and win totals and whatnot. The one thing I've left to cash is the Braves to win the NL East, which we're getting pretty close to happening at this point. But I thought that was fairly dead because they needed to sweep the Mets in order for it to happen. And they actually did sweep the Mets, which now makes it close to a lock. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to see those funds get added to my betting accounts. And then we carry on to the baseball playoffs and of course, NBA coming up as well.
Yeah, we got 2 more weeks. I cannot wait till that happens. I'm just ready to dive into it. I'm ready to have the consistency of the NBA season. You just kind of know exactly what most days are going to look like. I'm in for it. I can't wait.
Yep, 2 weeks from tomorrow.
I know. It's going to be good. Jimmy with the super chat right out of the gate said, just need one good take. Please say Dodgers. I mean, they're the top stack. We'll talk about whether or not they should be played, but they are the top stack, and it is not particularly close in my eyes.
Yep, they are also picking up a whole bunch of ownership. Also, I'd be curious, Jimmy, what site do you play on? Because that is also something that's going to make a little bit of difference. The Dodgers, super, super popular on both sites, but they are 23.5% owned as a team right now on FanDuel compared to 18% on DK. So DraftKings are over-owned, FanDuel like really over-owned. So the safest team is the Dodgers, but a team that I probably won't really have that much interest in large field tournaments just because of the ownership.
Well, we got to be out of here at 11 o'clock for the NFL strategy show. So you ready to get this one started? There are going to be a lot of spots where we can just be like, not interested.
Yeah, especially because there's weather involved as well.
Rangers and Yankees, 3.5 run implied total for the Rangers, 4.2 for the Yanks. Martin Perez going for Texas. Luis Severino going for the Yankees. No ownership coming into Perez. I assume that has a lot to do with the fact that he's facing the Yankees. Some ownership coming into Severino at 9,800. Not sure I agree with it, given that price tag. I don't know how deep he's going into this game. I don't know if we're going to just assume that he's fully stretched out at this point. Hasn't been as of late, still working his way back. I gave him 4 1/3. Maybe you want to say that's a little bit more lofty, but I don't think that I want to get to him at 9,800. I just don't know what his like true ceiling is here.
Yeah, totally agreed. I don't know what the pitch count is going to look like. Now, on the other side, the Rangers, not looking to play them either because the Yankees pretty good bullpen. Severino, while he's on the mound, is probably going to be effective. But yeah, at the price point Severino has on FanDuel and DraftKings, it's going to be difficult to play him regardless of how good we think he is. Because what does it matter if he's only pitching 4-ish or 4+ to 5 innings, maybe at a maximum? So I can't play Severino for that reason. Not a lot of interest in the Rangers either. And then as far as the Yankees offense goes, I hope Aaron Judge homers today just because it's become a really annoying story on social media. Is every Aaron Judge at bat, it's being live tweeted. If you're watching a sporting event and Aaron Judge comes up to the plate, they cut away to Aaron Judge. So just hit the home run. Let's get it over with at this point. But obviously, if there's anything to play in this game, the most interest, I think, has to come on the Yankees offense, just kind of by default.
Yeah, Yankees are 3rd in our top stack metric. They are 10th in ownership, so they are showing a little bit under-owned. They're not exactly the best value in the world. They are middle of the pack. I'm a little bit lower on them as a top stack, so I didn't get to much. But if I were getting to something here, it would be the Yankees bats.
Yeah, Martin Perez has been good this year. Certainly much better than he's been in previous years. 2.93 ERA, 3.52 expected ERA. Never going to be a high strikeout guy, but also induces a lot of ground balls, which tends to limit the upside against him. So he's not a pitcher that I've stacked against a whole bunch this year. And because some of the price points on the best Yankees hitters, I don't really think I'm going to be getting to there in any kind of significant way. But in terms of what I was saying before, the reason that the Yankees offense is the most interesting part of this game, it's just by default because everything else looks terrible, but it's a low priority stack.
Any priority for the Rangers side of this one? Not exactly highly ranked in top stack. They're like a edge of the top 10 top value team. No ownership coming in. I have like 3%, 4%, something in that neighborhood. That's fine, but it's not something that I'm going to write home about.
Yeah, in general, no. Severino, also, he's already a really good pitcher. And then also, if he knows he's only going to be pitching 4-ish innings or so, it's easier for him to ramp it up and go a little bit harder in those innings and be even more effective. Then it's going to get turned over to the bullpen, which should be pretty good in this spot because I assume the Yankees will still be throwing out some of their higher leverage relievers to get them work ahead of the playoffs. So the Rangers aren't in a good spot.
All right. I have nothing else to really add here. I don't see anything that other than Aaron Judge as any sort of cash option. This is just, I think we're sort of where we need to be here.
Yeah. And by the way, just to follow up too. Okay. We got the follow up. So Jimmy said that he's playing on FanDuel. So
okay.
We could answer this pretty quickly in terms of what we think the overall best stack is on FanDuel. I would say the Mets going up against Corey Abbott. Now, in terms of top stack odds, the Dodgers are ahead of them, but the Dodgers also have 3x the ownership of the Mets about when the Mets top stack odds are lower than the Dodgers, but it's a 14% to 9%. I really do like the matchups that the Mets have against Corey Abbott, who has just not really had good numbers this year, nor is there reason to think that he's going to be a good pitcher going forward. He's a 27-year-old pitcher without much big league experience. His minor league numbers were terrible. This year in AAA for the Nationals, 5.08 ERA, 4.74 FIP. Up at the big leagues this year, 5.11 ERA, 6.3 FIP. So just based on the Mets having a lot less ownership than the Dodgers and top stack odds that are lower, but not crazy lower, I do think that that's the best offense to get to with all things being considered.
There we go. Thanks for that super chat, Jimmy. Orioles and Blue Jays, 3.6 run implied total for the O's, 4.3 for the BJs. That would be Dean Kramer and Jose Barrios going in this one. I feel like I only talk about the same slate over and over again. When I updated my top pitchers tool, it was still the same guys from the last time that I ran it, like last Wednesday. No one's rostering Kramer at 6,600 because he faces the Blue Jays. Barrios is basically like the Toronto version of Luis Severino in this spot, getting 11% ownership. The difference here, Barrios has been ass for most of this season, and he is 6,200. So whether we think he's his old self or can be his old self, he's priced to be a garbage pitcher at 6,200. So I actually think the ownership is warranted here. Looks like a solid enough value.
So here's what I'm going to say about this game. I very rarely say this about games early in the morning. It's not going to play. I was looking at the weather for Baltimore. There's like a 70% chance of rain starting in an hour, and it goes until like the next day in the afternoon. So the odds of this game playing is almost non-existent. In the interest of time, I'm just going to say like this game isn't playing. It's popular right now, and I expect it's probably going to get canceled in the next few hours.
As usual, I like the Blue Jays stack if this were somehow going to exist, but I'm with you. I don't think talking about this is going to be all that interesting. Talk to us at 5:30 when it'll be myself and Adam Scher on MLB Live Before Lock. Adam will give you a boots on the ground Baltimore weather report, but at that point in time, I just assume that game already doesn't exist. So I'm with you. I don't really have much to add here. Clearly, the Blue Jays have a lot of power in their lineup, and if you like power bats, go there, but I don't think that we should be talking about. I think every bit of ownership in this game goes away.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting.
Boom. Easy. Does it matter to the Jays in position of the wild card? I'm about to find out.
I mean, if the game doesn't play, then the whole thing doesn't matter anyway. But no, the Blue Jays are pretty locked in as the top wild card team.
Yeah. So we got
2.5 games up on Seattle with 3 games left.
I'll just assume they're fine.
Yeah.
Schedule for the rest of the day. We got a busy one coming up immediately after this. The NFL Strategy Show Lineup Rewind. I believe that's going to be Eric and Adam breaking down everything that happened on yesterday's NFL main slate, which was awful, as most NFL main slates are. No House Advantage Monday Night Football show coming up at 3. MLB Live Before Lock. As I mentioned, I will be back with Adam for that one at 5:30. And then we proceed straight to football for Monday Night Football. NFL Deeper Dive at 6:30. NFL Live Before Lock at like 7:30. They're not the right times, but it starts at 6:30 and it's 2 straight hours and the stream doesn't change. So it'll transition from Deeper Dive to Live Before Lock at some point during that show. Make sure you're just watching for 2 straight hours all the way up until lock. And then free content for today, assuming I read this correctly and it did get updated today. I'm going to go with MLB player projections are free. That's what I'm looking at. If they're not free, send an email to support because I can't help that one.
Yeah. Yell at Joey Corman.
Apparently not. Mets and Nats. 4.8 run implied total for the Mets, 2.7 for the Nats. Carlos Carrasco and Corey Abbott. Carrasco pulling some love here, 9,600. He's got about 18% ownership. Not one of the 4 true chalky guys that are showing up today, but still one of the guys that are pulling ownership. You're either getting double digits of ownership or you're not owned at all. And Carrasco is part of that double digit crew. Corey Abbott, on the other hand, isn't. How do you like Carrasco against the Nats?
Well, one thing, I did really well in the football slate yesterday. Yeah, so nice. To me, I didn't hate it. Although there was a point where I had a bunch of lineups that were live in the Millie Maker on DK, and there was that guy who had the 32-man train that was in first place. I was like, this is going to be the slate I come in like. I have like the 3rd best lineup in the Millie Maker and end up coming in like 36th and making no money. It didn't end up happening, but there was a point where I thought that was a possibility. But as for this game, talked about a second ago, I really like the Mets in both DraftKings and FanDuel. The matchup against Corey Abbott is a really favorable one. In terms of ownership, I'm kind of surprised the Mets aren't more popular. We've got them picking up right around 7% ownership over on DK, 9% on FanDuel. This is usually the type of team where we would see them be, crazy popular and crazy overowned in a spot against a really weak pitcher like this. In fact, I think that's been the case for every other start that Corey Abbott has had. The only thing that I would say is maybe a potential cause for concern is the Mets not 100% eliminated from winning the division, but essentially eliminated from winning the division last night. And maybe they decide to rest guys today. I think they probably will wait until they're officially eliminated, but that would be the only thing I'd watch out for is do the Mets play all the regular guys?
There we go. We will keep an eye on that. I don't think that we're going to be talking about Corey Abbott in this spot unless the Mets just run out a wholesale awful lineup. But even then, I don't think that brings Corey Abbott into play. But we can talk about the Mets bats. 2nd in top stack, 8th in top value, 5th in ownership. So they are getting a little bit of love. We don't know what this lineup is totally going to look like, but if it looks like this, seems like the Mets will be pretty popular. I am neutral to the field right now. 8% owned Mets. They look good. I just hate the park.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, the pitcher's so bad in Corey Abbott that the Mets are a team that right now, based on all the information, is probably the team I'd be playing in single entry. The Dodgers are going to be crazy, crazy popular in single entry fields. Wouldn't be surprised if they end up being somewhere around like 50% owned in single entry just based on what their ownership is right now. So if you play any other team in those kind of fields, you're somewhat contrarian. And I really do think the Mets would be the next best team to get to. And then as far as pitchers go, Carrasco looks like a pretty solid option today as well.
On the Nats side, they are 6th in top value. I actually had them as a slightly better value. That didn't really matter to me. I did not get to the Nats.
Yeah, it's just going to be unnecessary, especially because pricing has been largely a non-factor down the later stretches of the MLB season. There's always good cheap plugins that we could play with weird lineups at this point in the year. And also Carrasco's been solid this year, 3.95 ERA. 3.48 FIP, 4.09 expected ERA. The strikeout stuff has been good this year, 24% K rate. There was a point in time this year where I was concerned, what is his velocity going to look like? Talking about a guy who's had so many injuries. He's older now. He also missed the season due to cancer at one point. And I thought we were going to just start to see the stuff and velocity start to decline now that he's 35 years old, but it hasn't been the case. Still has an average fastball velocity, 93.5 miles per hour. The results have been there. So there's other pitchers I certainly prefer to Carrasco today, but he's somebody who I think warrants somewhere around the ownership that he's getting in large field tournaments, right around mid-teens over on DraftKings. FanDuel, if you're playing Carrasco at, 10% ownership, where it's priced a little cheaper as well at 8,900, fairly safe to get stuff like the quality start and the win bonus over on FanDuel. So I think he's a good option on both sites, although not one that I think warrants that much different exposure than where the field is at.
I don't really have too much in this one from a cash perspective. Francisco Lindor, the only guy in double digits in ownership, although Brandon Nimmo is knocking on that door. I don't have anything really showing up here, so I'll touch on those types of plays in a little bit. We can move it on to Red Sox and Rays. 3.8 run implied total for the Sox, 4.3 for the Rays. Dick Mountain going for Boston. Tyler Glasnow going for the Rays. Rich Hill, no ownership. Tyler Glasnow, no ownership. You can't really go to, I don't expect Glasnow to be going deep into this game. I gave him 3 1/3 at 8,100. That's not all that interesting to me, even with the strikeout stuff that he has. To me, this is a non-pitching game.
Yeah, it's very seldomly do I get to Rich Hill. It has to be like a 3-game slate for me to even consider him. And then as far as Glasnow goes, yeah, Glasnow is great. And he looked really good in his first start of the season coming back, but he pitched 3 innings. And that's more or less what they were getting out of his minor league starts as well. So 3 innings is the most likely scenario, I think, here for Glasnow, 4 at most. So I just can't consider him when he's only going to be getting that many outs in the game. So can't consider either of the pitchers here. And then we'll talk about offense in a second, but I'm not looking to stack against Glasnow either.
Neither am I, but I am looking to stack against Rich Hill. 6th in top stack for the Rays, 7th in value. They are at 10th in ownership. I actually had them 2nd in terms of my top stack, 2 percentage points higher. I rarely get that big of a gap. And I have the exact same lineup, which is interesting, but 3 MPEs. I find this team to just be like very easily stackable. So even though they are mildly chalky, this is my biggest stand so far of the day. To me, the Rays are my favorite team on the slate.
I don't mind them, but at the same time, too, they haven't had a great offense this year. And while Rich Hill isn't pitching deep into games, he's been pretty serviceable this year. He's a 4.41 ERA, a 4.2 expected ERA, 3.82 FIP. So I don't think he's terrible, even if he isn't particularly good. And then in terms of starts this year, he's allowed more than 4 runs twice the entire season. He's just not a pitcher who's really gotten blown up. So I think the most likely scenario here is we're getting like 5 innings, 2 runs out of Rich Hill. Somewhere around there is kind of what he's done in like every single start this year, more or less. And he's also been better in the second half of the season than he was in the first half of the season. So he was injured earlier on in the year. And then as he's gotten more work, and it looks like he's I don't want to say improved because he's super old. It's not like he's gotten better as a pitcher, but I just think the fact that he was able to develop a little bit of a rhythm and then also just him not pitching frequently in the first half of the year might have played a factor, because second half of the season, he's a 3.47 FIP, 3.91 xFIP. His strikeout rate has increased to 21.8% in the second half of the season, while also reducing his walk rate to 6.3%. So I think Rich Hill is a pretty quality caliber pitcher right now. It's just that I can't roster him because he's not going to pitch deep into the game.
Here are my highlights for Tampa. Tampa's active roster on FanGraphs against lefties this year, 121 WRC plus. That's fifth in the league. Lineup that we have projected right now is 9 righty bats, 120 park factor for righty power in Boston. Rich Hill over the past year and a half, 181 x ISO to righties, 188 regular ISO. It's well over 200 when he throws his fastball, his most frequent pitch. I think he's live to give up a few dongs early in this one. I think all this righty power profiles very well against Hill. So all of those extra signs, not things that generally like drive anything for me, but from a narrative perspective, I think it's a lot of negatives against Hill. So I'm very happy to be getting to Tampa.
Yeah, if his bad starts looked worse this year,
yeah,
then it would be different to me. But he hasn't given a multiple home runs since May 30th. And like I said, also he just hasn't had very many. He hasn't had very many great starts. His last one, notwithstanding, where he pitched 6 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts. But he hasn't had too many bad starts either. It's kind of the same lines from him in almost every single start. We do have them being pretty popular, but like you said, it's a difference to where you have the Rays projected better than what our current projections are, and then they're also pretty popular.
Jose Siri, Yandy Diaz, Harold Ramirez, Wander Franco, all 20% or higher in my cash crunch as well. So you can sneak some of these Rays guys into cash lineups too. I don't have much interest in the Boston side of this one, whether it's Glass now for a couple innings and then bullpen game, just doesn't look like the best spot.
No, and then also if we look at where the Rays are right now, because before, what was it, Stephen Leibowitz who asked us if the game mattered for the Jays or for the Blue Jays? I think it was.
Yeah,
if
I think
not,
so.
But for the Rays, it does. They are a game and a half separating them versus the Mariners. So they actually are jockeying for wild card positioning right there. So we are going to see, once Tyler Glasnow comes out of the game, the Rays want to be playing their highest leverage relievers in this spot. It's not a good place for the Red Sox offense.
Not so much, no. We'll go to Brewers Diamondbacks, 4.4 run implied total for the Brew Crew, 2.8 for the Diamondbacks. This one's going to be pretty easy to talk about. Brandon Woodruff on the hill for Milwaukee. Tommy Henry going for Arizona. Henry not getting any love at 5,400. I think he probably deserves a couple percentage points of ownership. He's not a priority by any means, but a completely functional pay down option in this spot. Great strikeout matchup against Milwaukee. The bell of the ball here is $10,600 Brandon Woodruff, most expensive pitcher on the slate. For me, the highest projected pitcher and the pretty clear top option.
And most importantly, there's reason for the Brewers to pitch him deep into the game, where they are also a team where, in all likelihood, they're not making the playoffs. The Phillies have opened up a couple game lead, but it's not totally out of the question. And the Brewers are very motivated to want to win this game, which is something that generally would be a stupid thing to say, in my opinion, as analysis, because every team generally wants to win games. It's obviously the fact, the goal of the entire thing, but there are going to be a lot of teams who it's like, hey, we don't want to risk this pitcher. He's only going 3 or 4 innings today. Woodruff is likely going to pitch as deep as he possibly can in this game. He's really good strikeout stuff. The matchup is good. The results have been good this year. 3.05 ERA, 3.15 expected ERA. So I'm on the same page as you with all the factors considered. Woodruff is the best pitching option of the day.
He is the guy I have the most right now, 59%. That will work for me. On the opposite side for Henry, like I said, I think like 5% is totally warranted, but it's not really worth like digging into.
Yeah, no, he has not been particularly good this year. And then also a matchup against the Brewers where the Brewers don't have a terrible offense. I'm a little surprised how popular they are, though.
Yeah, let's talk about that. 8th in top stack, 10th in value, 2nd in ownership. I actually was a little bit higher from a top stack perspective than we were by a full percentage point and thought it was a slightly better value. I'm not getting to that ownership number, though. That's a bit too high for me. So I have 5% in comparison to the 12 that we're showing. I get it. Like they're not, it's a good spot. I love the park for power. Like I think it all looks good on the surface. It's just over-owned.
Yeah. If the ownership wasn't a factor, I'd be like, hey, this is a good spot for the Brewers, but they're the second most popular team on FanDuel and a lot more popular than even a team like the Mets, who have nearly double the top stack odds. And then on DraftKings, like I said before, 12% ownership. So it's just way above the break-even point in terms of how much I would want to play this team. Like you said, even if you're a little bit higher on them than our projections, it's such a big gap. We have them a 5.8% top stack score with a 12% with 12% projected ownership as a team. So that's a really wide gap, over-owned. If these numbers hold to the time the slate locks, it's just not a team I would be interested in.
I think we're pretty safe to skip the Arizona Diamondbacks in this spot.
Yeah, one of the weakest offenses to target on the entire slate. The only reason they don't have the lowest top stack odds is because the Tigers exist against the right-hand pitcher. It's a bad spot for the D-backs.
Well, we're at the halfway point here. So for the 99 of you that are in the room, please hit that thumbs up. It would help us out tremendously. We got to talk a little bit about PrizePicks, presenting sponsor of this show. There's going to be a link in the description of this video. Click it, head on over to PrizePicks and make a deposit. You'll get up to $100 on that deposit. That's a really good deal. If you've got the ability to put in $100, the fact that they can give you another 100 really gives you a nice starting bankroll. You don't have to worry about having an optimizer or anything like that. You're going to make parlay cards, basically. You're going to put 5 on one. You'll net up to 10x your entry fee. And this could be across a bunch of different sports. I'm seeing NBA stuff here, college football, soccer, tennis, League of Legends, highlight, which is just amazing that it exists on PrizePicks. I'd love to know how many people are attacking the highlight lines. The fact that everybody for highlight has pictures is also incredible, but
so based on what I know about highlight, the people betting on highlight are the people playing in the highlight matches.
I have no idea what you just said because my AirPods cut out the moment you started talking. Now you are back in my ear. So go for it again. Run it back.
All right. So highlight. Now I feel like I have to redo the joke and explain it. But for people who don't know,
That's
highlight is a notoriously rigged sport.
Ooh, didn't know.
Yeah. So I said the only people that are playing highlight on PrizePicks are the people who are playing the highlight on PrizePicks.
Got it. I had no idea.
Yeah. It's a very rigged sport.
I mean, I guess this implies that there are odds because Bueno and Kubala have, at least on my screen, over under 0 fantasy score props. What are we doing here? How's that a thing?
I guess they could score negative.
If you can't, I feel like these are easy jammable props, but let's talk about the baseball side of this one. I don't think we need to talk about highlight much longer. I'm going to give you a couple pitcher ones and we'll see where we end up. So let's start with Brandon Woodruff, over under 45.5.
By the way, you could get negative points if you're off the board, which I don't know what that refers to. Sorry, what was
45.5 on Woodruff?
That's a really high number. I think I have to stay away from it just because of some of the inherent variance involved in baseball. So the floor is incredibly high for Brandon Woodruff today, but for him to reliably get over 45.5, that's a pretty big ask.
Next, we could take a look at, let's do Martin Perez, over under 24.5. I'm going to take the over there.
It's tough because I hate them. I want to see what the Yankees lineup is. I'll put it that way. We've seen the Yankees rest a lot of players, and we've seen them put out some really crappy lineups over the last couple weeks. Aaron Judge is going to be in the lineup because they're trying to get him that AL home run record. But guys like Stanton's been in and out of the lineup. Gleyber Torres has been out from time to time. You know, if it's another one of those lineups where it's like, hey, look, Oswaldo Perez is in the lineup and Higashioka catcher, and it's just, garbage from 4 to 9. Then I think we could look at the Martin Perez over. If the Yankees just play their entire best possible lineup, then it would be a stay away.
Go check out PrizePicks, everybody. Like I said, link in the description. Thank you to PrizePicks for being the sponsor here. Next, we move it on to White Sox and Twins. 3.7 run implied total for the White Sox, 3.5 for the Twins. Johnny Cueto and Bailey Ober. Neither guy getting any sort of love. I actually have Johnny Cueto projected, at least in my top pitchers tool, quite a bit better than we do. I'm still not getting to him all that much, but I don't mind that at 7,300.
Yeah, so Cueto at 7,300. What does this pitch count look like as of late? Because this is a team that has absolutely nothing to play for. And I do get concerned that Cueto isn't getting a full workload. So let me just double check his pitch count here to see what it's been in recent starts. So Cueto, let's see, is there any reason to be concerned? I mean, 83 pitches his last time out. That's not crazy restrictive. It's not the most in the world either.
He faced 26 batters, gave up
Yeah.
10 hits, and struck out 7. Like, I think he was just dead to that rest of that game at that point. He'd already given up 6 runs.
Yeah. So, I mean, Cueto this year, he's been way better than I think he warranted being. He's a 3.39 ERA, 3.97 expected ERA. He's 36 years old. He doesn't really have good stuff anymore, but he's just so good as a pitcher in terms of messing up hitters' tempos and just making do with the stuff that he has. The Twins lineup at this point in the year is pretty crappy. They don't have Byron Buxton anymore, and it's a team that's really fallen apart in the second half of the year. The thing that bothered me the most about Cueto, though, is just the low strikeout rate. Only a 15.7% K rate this year, so he's induced a lot of soft contact. I just question the fantasy upside of somebody who has a strikeout rate of 15.7%.
Yeah, I didn't really get to much. I thought I would actually get to more just because of where I have him in my top stack or my top pitcher tool, but I do have 5%, so I don't need to go too crazy. But 7,300 as a price tag just sort of worked. Do you have any other Bailey Ober thoughts?
Not really. I think in a lot of ways, his numbers are not dissimilar from Johnny Cueto. Doesn't generate a lot of strikeouts, but has been good at preventing runs, 3.18 ERA, 2.74 FIP this year. So I'm not exactly dying to stack against him with the White Sox, but moving forward, projections aren't as high on Ober, and there's not really an expectation that he's going to be a high strikeout guy. Last year, actually, the strikeout stuff wasn't terrible last year. But either way, Bailey Ober, not really a pitcher I generally back a whole ton. At 6,900, I guess if you needed to save salary, you can make a case for him, but he is on the road in Chicago. It's a hitter-friendly park, so it would be a low priority. I just don't think the salary savings are necessary.
For the bats in this one, I guess we'll start with the Twins, 11th in top stack, but second in our value metric. They are 6th in ownership, so they're pulling quite a bit. A lot of that is just Nick Gordon at 20-something%, whereas everybody else is like 5%. So the Twins stack itself, not all that highly owned. I'm not getting to much. I get the appeal. Nick Gordon does look great with the second base outfield MPE. I don't have a ton of interest in either side of this game. I'm going to have like 4% of both teams, and that's just sort of where I'm at.
Yeah, and 4% of the Twins is way underweight to the field on them when they're projected for 7% right now. So I don't really like them relative to their ownership. And the White Sox against Bailey Ober, a pitcher who generally hasn't had a whole bunch of upside, like I was saying before, but he has been serviceable this year. So I don't think there's a whole lot to like in this game. Pitchers both okay without much strikeout upside. The offense is both pretty weak ones, especially because the White Sox have had so many injuries and are missing so many guys at this point in the season. This is a fairly unappealing game.
White Sox side of this one, I've got another 5%, but they are 12th and 13th in top stack, top value. They are a clear, just like dead middle of the pack team today.
Yeah, relative to ownership, it's nothing that's really interesting. If anybody's building, a handful of lineups or up to 20, three entry max, the White Sox are not a team to consider.
All righty. Then we shall keep it moving. Astros and Phillies, 3.8 run implied total for the Stros, 3.4 for the Phils. Lance McCullers and Aaron Nola. McCullers, 10,300, third most expensive pitcher on the slate behind Brandon Woodruff and behind Aaron Nola, who's 10,400. Nola, 11% owned. McCullers, unowned. I mean, when I look at this, I think it's pretty clear. I would just rather have McCullers than Nola.
So I think the biggest thing that matters to me here, though, is that Nola, well, I think both of them relative to ownership are good plays, to be clear. So we've got Nola right now 11% owned over on DK on FanDuel. Nola's projected for 3% ownership. And it's a game that the Phillies are looking to win, right? They're very close to clinching a playoff spot. So I expect Nola is going to be working deep into the game and get his normal pitch count. So that in itself, I think probably warrants him getting more ownership than what he's currently getting. So if we're paying up for pitchers to be contrarian, I think both of them make sense in this spot when they're both relatively low owned, and we have better top pitchers odds on both these guys than what their ownership is.
And I do as well. I'm a little bit higher on McCullers. I'm dead neutral on Aaron Nola. But if one of these guys is getting 11% and the other one isn't, I need to kind of see a reason why. I actually have McCullers projected slightly higher than Nola. Not that I really care too much where that actually lands, just because in a large field GPP, I think it's just easier to take the opposite side of the ownership. I think they look like very, very similar options today.
I would say probably the biggest mark against McCullers is he hasn't pitched in 2 weeks, and that could be something that limits his pitch count today. That I think is probably the biggest driver of his ownership right now. He missed a start last week with an illness, and just because where the Astros are in the standings, they're like, screw it, we'll skip McCullers in the rotation. If that means he's only going to throw 80 pitches or something like that today, which I assume some people have projected, that would be the biggest mark against him. But it's something we would need a little more information on. It's been a minute since he started, though.
That's a fair point. Looking into that will be important. Let's see. We don't have a pitches thing yet. 15.5 outs is the prop for McCullers on PrizePicks, which does imply that he would be a little bit lighter because he's normally a guy that goes kind of deep. So I think we're kind of projecting a little bit lighter of a pitch count today. That is something that I'm going to knock back right now. Probably won't be getting to as much McCullers later on. I mean, I only had 11%, so it's not exactly a big stand.
Yeah, and let me look too, just for comparison's sake. I want to open up, because I know DK offers pitcher prop outs, and sometimes that's different looking than PrizePicks. So let's see where they have him, or if they even have that market up at this point in the day. Could be something they're waiting to get a little more information on the pitchers from. But outs, so they also have McCullers at 15.5.
Yeah, so I knocked them back a bit. I definitely, the easier part to talk about here is that I don't have any interest in either offense. If I got Astros bats or like some of the premier Phillies bats, that's fine because they're just ultra talented hitters. You want Yordan Alvarez or Kyle Tucker or Bryce Harper or something, by all means. But stacking against McCullers, stacking against Nola, I'm not interested.
No, especially not when we have so many shitty pitchers on the slate. So I know we haven't talked about a whole lot of them yet, but there's going to be some bad pitchers we talk about in a little bit that we are going to want to target.
Let's go to Padres and Giants. 4.5 run implied total for the Pods, 2.7 for the Giants. Joe Musgrove and what looks like Sean Jelly as the long man. Musgrove, 33% owned today. That is something else at 8,700. It makes some sense to me. At the same time, 33% feels pretty high. What are you seeing here for Musgrove against the Giants?
Yeah, so Musgrove is having a really good season, and he did miss some time, so you'd think maybe there could be concerns about his pitch count, but he threw 106 pitches in his last outing. So assuming that he's fully stretched out, I do think he's probably a little bit over-owned in this spot, and if I'm playing one of the chalky pitchers, I would rather get to Woodruff than get to Musgrove. But Musgrove, I think, is the next best cash option. So for DK, if you guys are playing cash games, I do think the two pitchers that make the most, well, actually, it's pretty close. Woodruff is a clear number one. Then to me, it's kind of a coin flip between Musgrove and George Kirby for the next spot. But I mean, Musgrove, considering it doesn't look like there's any pitch count concerns, he's had a really good year. 3.03 ERA, 3.37 expected ERA, 24.7% K rate. I think it's a pretty good spot overall for Musgrove, but at the same time, too, the ownership's fairly high for large field tournaments.
Yeah, I got to 20%. I think he looks good, but 33 felt a little heavy. I mean, I think him and Kirby look very, very similar. I also like Patrick Sandoval, who we'll get to. It's a little bit more savings there. But yeah, cash is going to be Woodruff plus probably one of Kirby or Musgrove. That seems like the most likely scenario. I don't think we need to talk about Sean Jelly. I think we can talk about Padres bats. 6th in top stack, 12th in value, 8th in ownership. So a little bit of love coming in, and that's about where I see it.
So by the way, is there anything that would indicate that Musgrove is limited? There would be a designated long reliever.
Musgrove?
Oh, is that not what you were saying before?
No.
Or did I misunderstand you?
I think we're on different pages right now. Okay, so I saw earlier that Jelly is going to be the long man for the Giants today.
Okay, never mind. I thought you said long man for the Padres. So
no. Musgrove is starting in normal.
Okay.
John Brebbia is opening for the Giants. Long man Sean Jelly.
Yeah. So in terms of looking at bullpen games for opposing offenses, it's generally not something I love unless a team really has a shitty bullpen. And when I look at the Padres and the fact they're picking up some ownership here at 6.4%, and then also the park is not necessarily the most conducive for offense in San Diego. To me, I think it's always kind of hard to evaluate some of the offenses in this spot, but bullpen games, it's worse than facing like a middle of the rotation pitcher. So I'm not really high on this spot for the Padres.
Neither am I. 4% is what I got, which is 4% more than I got of the Giants. I'm not really trying to target on the opposite side of Musgrove.
Yeah, and then also just to bring up the stats for the Giants bullpen this year. So the Giants bullpen for the year has a 4.03 ERA and a 3.85 FIP. You know, if you were going up against a pitcher that had those kind of numbers, just 4.03 ERA, 3.85 FIP, you'd be like, oh, that's a slightly below average matchup. But we've seen a lot of these spots where the offenses just kind of get overowned, and that looks like it's the case with the Padres.
Couple more games to go here. 3, in fact, before we turn it over to the NFL strategy show. I do just want to let you guys know, we're talking sports betting here quickly. If you are an Ohio resident, sports betting will soon be coming to your state. You can register for FanDuel Sportsbook right now. Clicking the link in the description of this video, you'll get up to $100 in free bets. So buckle up, state of Ohio. It's coming soon. Must be nice. That is not a statement for the state of North Carolina, which is not getting this soon. Thank you, North Carolina.
Is there like any legislature that's on the table or anything?
We missed it by a vote like 2 months ago.
Oof.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be good to go, and it lost by a single vote.
Dumbest shit ever, especially because it drives so much tax revenue. And then it's like, no, it's okay. We have the lottery, which like the lottery isn't gambling, where sports betting, they do consider when the lottery, you're just nearly guaranteed to lose. Just let sports betting happen.
I can't wait till it does. A's and Angels, 3.1 run implied total for the A's, 4 for the Angels. Adrian Martinez and Patrick Sandoval. Martinez unowned at 5,800. If you told me that he deserved 5% or so, that's fine. Sandoval, a little bit more owned, 7,700 here, 33% owned, and I think it's mostly justified. I like the price tag. The matchup against the A's is fantastic. It's a good strikeout spot. All things point towards Patrick Sandoval just having like the best possible things coming at him. And he's a solid enough strikeout pitcher, good real pitcher. I like Sandoval quite a bit here.
Yeah, it's a good matchup for him. Now, his last start also came against the A's, and he was kind of mediocre in it. He also got BABIP to death in that start. He had a 353 BABIP. I remember there was one ball that was hit like off the end of a bat that led to a double where a couple runs scored in that game. But either way, the overall numbers for Sandoval this year are really good. The matchup is good, and he's cheap. 3.03 ERA, 4.06 expected ERA, 3.16 FIP. The strikeout rate for Sandoval right around 24%. He is way too cheap, particularly on DraftKings, which has been the case for a lot of his starts as of late. Not really sure why that's the case. Over on FanDuel, they have the price right. He's $9,000 over on FanDuel, still picking up some ownership there at 11% because $9,000 is a fair price point for Sandoval, and he's in a good matchup. It's reasonable people would want to get there. The DK price is much too cheap. He's very clearly the best value option on the slate.
Don't expect to be getting to any Oakland A's bats. Do you have any interest since they are the #1 value stack in our top stack metric?
No, because they would still have to score runs. And the reason that they're such a good value team is because the hitters are so bad that they're all about mint price.
Yep, true. Don't need them. Also don't have much interest in the Angels side of this one against Martinez. They are 7th in top stack, 8th in ownership. I think they're basically properly owned. If you get Trout or Ohtani, enjoy it. Otherwise, I'm not all that worried about the Angels here.
I do like the Angels, and there's a couple of reasons for it. Number one, the 5-man stacks for this team are never really represented all that highly because anytime you see ownership go to this team, it's Trout and Ohtani. The other hitters don't get owned really at all. And Adrian Martinez has sucked this year. He's a 6.08 ERA, a 5.61 expected ERA, and a 5.61 FIP. So that's good for negative wins above replacement. At one point, he was pitching so poor, the A's sent him down to AAA. In AAA, he had a 5.72 ERA and a 6.38 FIP. This might be the worst pitcher on the slate. At the very least, he's one of the worst pitchers. And 5-man stacks for the Angels are not going to be that popular. So I actually do like getting to the Angels quite a bit. I wish the park was better, obviously. But Adrian Martinez, at least from what we've seen this year, has been a pitcher who fails no matter where he pitches.
There we go. Hear that, Adrian Martinez? Greg thinks you suck.
Well, he does. And by the way, last year in AAA, he had a 5.28 ERA and a 5.29 expected ERA, a 5.29 FIP in AAA. And that was last year. This year, even worse in AAA.
Luckily for you, there's only 3 days left in the regular season, so there's no chance that Adrian Martinez is watching this show. No one else is.
Yeah, no, that's the only reason Adrian Martinez isn't watching the show is because there's 3 days left in the baseball season. And there might be 3 days left in his MLB career.
Also true. Mariners and Tigers, 4.3 run implied total for the Mariners, 2.7 for the Tigers. Not a very good offense. And they get a date with George Kirby on the opposite side. 9K for Kirby, projected for 34% ownership. I think that's spot on. He looks really good. To me, probably the second best pitching option on the slate behind Woodruff because he gets to face the Tigers, and that's like a free square.
Tigers have been miserable against right-handed pitching for the entire season, and George Kirby, who went to the same college as me, is having a really good year. He was one of the top pitching prospects coming into the year, and he's shown why. To get called up to the big leagues when you're 24 years old and right out of the gate have the kind of success he's had, where he's a 3.21 ERA, 2.89 FIP, the strikeout numbers have been there, 24.5% K rate. The stuff is clearly really good. The off-speed pitches he has, just based on the eye test, it definitely plays up to par. And then also just 95.4 average fastball velocity so far this year. So everything lines up for me to think that he's going to be a future ace, and he's the best matchup possible, the Tigers against a right-hand pitcher. So Kirby, really good play in the mid-range. Him versus Musgrove, it's fairly close. I guess maybe a slight lean towards Kirby just because the matchup is better, but both of them are good options.
Stephen Leibowitz said Kirby pitched for the University of Phoenix.
Online, yeah.
That was good. That popped me. I laughed legit when I saw it. So kudos to you for that one. Any Brian Garcia love?
No, not at all. And I do think that there's reason to want to stack against him, but rostering him as a pitcher, that is going to be a no.
Okay. Well, let's talk Mariners bats, since I don't think we're talking about rostering the Tigers. 9th for the Mariners in top stack, 3rd in top value, and 3rd in ownership. I think they're a bit overowned. I know why they're getting the ownership. They seem sort of like an optimizer darling here. I'm going to be light on the Mariners, but I understand the appeal.
Yeah, so there are some interesting numbers here on Brian Garcia. Most of them are bad. And he does have a 3.29 ERA. He's only made 3 starts in the big leagues this year. He's pitched 13 innings, a small sample size. So he has a 3.29 ERA. He does have a 6.34 expected ERA and a 6.55 FIP. Last year, he made 39 appearances out of the bullpen, and it's much easier to be a relief pitcher than be a starter. He still had a 7.55 ERA and an 8.36 expected ERA last year. In the minor leagues this year, he did have a 3.8 ERA, which is not good, but not terrible either. But he had a 4.83 expected ERA. So he's been buoyed by a lot of good BABIP luck this year. 182 BABIP in the big leagues, 276 in the minor leagues this year. I think the most likely scenario is that this is just a bad pitcher. So he's one that we could get to with the Mariners bats. To your point before, though, I do agree they are a little bit over-owned, where we have them nearly 9% owned over on FanDuel. DK projected for 11% ownership right now. So I like the spot for the Mariners. The ownership just a little bit too high, though.
And then we close it out. Dodgers and Rockies. Just assume everything for the Rockies is the same as it is for the Tigers, in that they are dog shit. 5.2 run implied total for the Dodgers, 2.8 for the Rockies. Tony Gonsolin and Jose Urena. Don't expect Gonsolin to be going very deep in this game at 10,100. To me, he is fully unplayable today. Jose Urena is unplayable for a completely different reason, because he faces the Dodgers. No pitching here, right?
No pitching. And the other thing also when it comes to Urena is that he also sucks. He has not had an ERA sub 5 since 2018. So how he keeps getting big league gigs is kind of beyond me. But Jose Urena, pretty clearly one of the worst pitchers on the slate. The Dodgers, one of the best offenses that we have in all of baseball, and they have a great matchup. But now we've talked about the ownership, because they are 18% owned on DraftKings, 23% on FanDuel. No matter how you slice it, that's too much ownership. So it would be looking to undercut it. The other talking point here becomes, though, is how do we make any kind of Dodger stacks that are somewhat lesser owned? And this is where I think that we start to talk about some of those really low owned pitchers that we mentioned before. Because if you want to make a Dodger stack, but you're rostering, say, Aaron Nola or Lance McCullers at pitcher, well, then it doesn't really matter as much what the offensive ownership is. But if you're just playing the Dodgers and it's like, well, I have Patrick Sandoval and Brandon Woodruff as my pitchers, that's a really difficult lineup to have a high GPP finish with.
Yep. I had the Dodgers 1. We have them 1. I'm basically neutral to the field. It's just going to be about where you can be mildly different, whether that's, as you mentioned, going to someone like Nola or McCullers right out of the gate. It's going to make a Dodgers stack feel a little bit different, but they're 10+% owned across the entire board, and they should be. It's to me, the very clear best spot from a success, like from a likelihood perspective. You got to take ownership into account, but it's warranted.
Load up on the Dodgers in cash games. Tournaments, just try to find ways to differentiate the lineup, either a low-owned secondary stack, low-owned pitchers, because that's what all the field is going to be doing. They're going to be playing some of these popular pitchers. Dodger stacks, that's the chalk of the day.
All right, let's sum it up before we kick it on over to the NFL strategy show. Favorite pitchers for today?
So favorite pitchers overall, if we're just talking about the most popular guys, Woodruff, Musgrove, Kirby, Patrick Sandoval, nothing crazy there. If I'm going contrarian, though, Nola is the one that currently stands out the most to me.
I agree with the same 4, and I'll go McCullers over Nola, but it's basically the same answer. Favorite stacks?
Yeah, so favorite stacks, so I'm going more pop. Well, the chalky stack you guys should be playing in cash games is the Dodgers. Tournaments, they are very popular. So my single entry stack, if things are what they are right now later on in the day, would be the Mets in single entry. And then I like the Angels quite a bit too against Adrian Martinez.
Rays were my biggest stand. The second biggest stand I had was the Toronto Blue Jays, which don't think is going to exist when we get there. So we'll see a change. I have a lot of the Dodgers, but it's just neutral. My biggest things are fades. That would be the Brewers and the Mariners.
Fair.
All right, so MLB Live Before Lock, 5:30. That'll be myself and Adam, so we've got another hour of MLB coverage. But for right now, NFL Strategy Show recap edition for yesterday is coming up next. Thank you to PrizePicks for being the sponsor. Good luck to everybody for all the content that we have coming out for the rest of the day. Make sure you're watching that stuff. Win some money. We're out. Peace.